oh boy, things just got amped up a notch here, clearly. This is an assassination, and that we have to keep watching close to see what all it turns into here in the following days and weeks. But after digesting some information and taking in different sources, looking at this thing, big picture, this is going to be key in this situation, really, as it is with anything nowadays. We live in a really, really complex environment, and everything has really been rolled together as far as their consequences and effects on one another between international and domestic policy here in the United States. So there's not really things that happen that stay in their own lane, you could say. If you know what you're looking at, they want you to believe that our domestic issues are separate from, say, our foreign policy, right? This story here with Charlie is a perfect example, and his assassination is a perfect example of how things aren't always quite what they seem, and when you pull back the curtain, there's a whole web and a bunch of strings, maybe even the guy maneuvering stuff back there that you just can't see from out here, right? So first and foremost, it's a sad day. You know, we don't want to see political assassinations, political violence of any type. This launches into a whole discussion about this issue from a domestic perspective, which I don't want to downplay, and I don't want to deny that any of these things are relevant. All the issues that are happening here domestically are relevant. But let me say also that I believe that they're put in place and meant to divide us at the same time. So they're relevant in the sense that, yeah, these things, the racism, real racism that's out there now, because it's perpetuated itself to that point that it's actually fueling and encouraging racism, and people are turning over and embracing hate. But the racism and supposed racism that they talk about in the country, these are things that we all have to deal with for sure. And every other reality is something we have to deal with. But what I'm saying is it's not what they deliver it as on face value. It's much deeper than that. My hypothesis here with the Charlie Kirk thing is going to tell you that these are domestic issues whose sole purpose is to break down the society of the United States and to distract its citizens from bigger and more important things that are happening. Why do I think that? Well, let's take a look at things, man. I have to admit I'm not the biggest proponent, follower, or anything of Charlie Kirk. To me, he was a voice that spoke out in favor of Israel, and he was effectively placed in that box for me. Now, I've become hip to the fact that in the recent weeks, Charlie's attitude towards Israel has changed. His opinions have changed. He's been speaking out a little differently against the genocide. Now, that's great because this is normal. This shows that there was like potentially maybe a soul in that dude, right? And he wasn't completely sold out. No pun intended. So I think the world has been watching, and people that have been sitting on the sidelines, have been sitting in silence. They're saying enough is enough with this genocide in Gaza, and it looks as if Charlie may have been one of those people. Now, that's a big deal, okay? Whether that happened at all is a very, very, very big deal in this situation. As a matter of fact, it's something that my hypothesis hinges upon, okay? I'm going to analyze this situation completely different if you have Charlie never turning his opinion on Gaza and continuing up until his death to speak out in 100% favor and defense of Israel, as opposed to a Charlie that had turned in recent weeks and months and was starting to voice his opinion against Israel's genocide. This is a huge why in the analytics and the analysis of this situation. And where you move forward. So let me say that. Now, if we take the information that's come out, according to multiple sources, it seems to be that Charlie had begun to fear for his life. He had spoke out to friends of his, and this has worked out to the media and gotten out to the media from his friends that he was in fear of Israel assassinating him, killing him. So much to the point that he was wearing body armor when he was shot and killed. Okay, these are major points here. Huge points. We're going to take them and move forward with them. Okay, so here's a guy that's basically one of the main propagandists of the Jewish state, of the genocidal state here in America, up to a certain point when he says enough is enough, and he begins to speak out, or angle himself even to speak out against Israel. This is a big deal, okay? The Jews are looking at the situation here in America as something that's really a foundational element to their ability to continue to genocide Palestinians and ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip. They know that they need to control public opinion here in the United States to a certain degree, and if they lose the base, then that's a real problem for them. They are operating on a set of circumstances, just like this argument, that are very important, and those are that Netanyahu's acting as if he has free reign until the midterm elections. That's why you see his foot on the gas pedal so hard right now. In addition to that, he's at really the pinnacle, or like zenith point, of his murderous career, right? So for his own sake and for the sake of the state that he leads, he has to keep the gas down. He has to keep his foot on the pedal. So this is the make or break moment for them, for our support for them here on the domestic front, because like I said, if Trump turns out at the midterm elections and it doesn't look good for him, then this is potentially a different story. Now, AIPAC does everything they can to ensure that that's not the case, and many would argue, of course, from the Biden administration, they allowed this genocide to happen and continue until it got to the point that it's now been amplified here under Trump and everything. But the bottom line is that these things would be a problem for Israel, losing public support and losing the midterm elections for Trump. So they're operating on limited time, right? And I believe that's why you've seen things amped up. That's why you've seen things increase almost in a compounding manner in recent weeks, days, and months. And that includes the killing of Palestinians, the genociding of innocent people, and what now is the starvation of innocent people and the famine that's setting in Gaza. Israel's put their gas down, moving into Gaza Strip. No signs of stopping, and it looks like they're going all out now in the West Bank in whatever way they can as well. So what does that tell you? You got Israel's operating to fulfill this greater Israel plan, and that's a big thing for a broader argument. Okay, so the stage is set. They're going all out. They're going to keep doing this regardless of international opinion until someone physically steps in and stops them, okay? Now, there's been a growing wave of public opinion that is coming out against Israel here in the United States. That can't be doubted. I think this is mirrored globally, although, of course, the rest of the world is long ahead of us in that regard. However, with the sailing of this flotilla, say, right, perfect example, 50 to 70 ships, it's already come under attack. I'll have a Substack paper I'm working on now that's going to update the flotilla situation, a follow-up to the first article I did on the flotilla. But the flotilla is now headed to Gaza, 50 plus some say up to 70 ships deep, and it's already been attacked by Israel off the coast of Tunisia. So we know that is an issue of paramount importance. It's a pressing issue for Israel because effectively the global communities put the ball in their court. World citizens have stepped up to do something when their governments haven't, and the Jews have already put their response on the table with an attack and threats of more attacks. So they want to communicate to the rest of the world, especially the folks on this flotilla, that you better not think of continuing on and landing in Gaza, and everything is a deterrent against more people speaking out in the same manner that they are. So what you see is a defense of their position in all regard, and then a step up of their campaign of war crimes, of disregard of international law. We see the attack on the sovereign state of Qatar, effectively a partner of their own supporter of us in the United States. I mean, you know, this is the first time in history we have a country that's attacked a neutral state holding peace negotiations. This is like unheard of in history. This is not normal civilized behavior, right? The rest of the world is seeing this and is sick of it. The Jews know what they're doing. I mean, the only thing that you could think they're aiming for is to try to accomplish this in a certain period of time and hope that they can establish this greater Israel. It seems like that's it. That's the big prize here, and they're going for it all out. So the game's on. With a guy like Kirk changing his opinion here in the United States, this would be massive. This could be the type of thing that would completely shift public support in the United States. Because if you could change the MAGA base, which is bullshit, I don't prescribe to a right-left paradigm. Anyone that's caught in a left-right paradigm, you're being fooled and propagandized. But the bottom line is if he could have convicted and swayed the opinion of Trump's base, the MAGA group of people, Republicans, conservatives, I mean, these are the only people that are left supporting Israel. No one in the world is left supporting Israel. You understand that? Literally, that's almost a literal statement. This could have changed the game, right? If this guy continues to speak for the next few weeks, months, for sure, he is a major block in the building of this movement to stop the genocide in Palestine, if that is the case. Okay, so bottom line is you have him speaking out to his friends and family, like I said, which has now got out to the media, that he was fearing for his life, and he named Israel as who he was worried about carrying that out. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't racist people in America. It wasn't the right or left argument in America. He wasn't worried about a left-wing person assassinating him. That's not why he was wearing body armor. He was wearing body armor because he feared that Israel was going to take him out, his own words. Okay? So this situation is of paramount importance because they want us to get distracted and to look at this through a domestic lens and fall into the trap of left-right, of black-white, of division. When the facts is that this guy just got assassinated and he was concerned for his life because of the same state player that is breaking all international rules right now all over the globe and killing whoever they want, where they want. That same state player has their hands all in our domestic policies here in the United States, has their hands all in our deteriorating situation here in the United States. Who's the more likely culprit? What are we looking at here? Okay. What was the other? Okay, there was not an ambulance present at this event. Okay. I watched, as I was piecing together my opinion here, waiting to record something on this, there's a few videos that I took in. One of them was Clayton Morris. Got a lot of good stuff out of his video, and except for he dropped you off at the wrong spot right at the end, right? That's what I'm trying to fix here. But check his video out from Redacted, and good info in there. But he made a great point, of course, that an ambulance, by basically municipal and local laws, all states in our country have laws that ambulances need to be present for gatherings, right? So I know that if I'm holding an event, I've done that. I've held events where you expected a certain amount of people. You have to get them permitted by the city here where I live, because I was in Lebanon City Municipality. So up at the park where we have the gathering going on, they park an ambulance, okay? For sure, the Charlie Kirk event at this university was on that level. You probably should have had multiple ambulances there, judging by the amount of people that I saw in the videos. Now, there's no ambulance present. This guy ended up having to be taken to the hospital by it was 4 or 5 people in plain clothes that threw him into the back of an SUV. That's weird. That's not normal. So again, here we have you have to say why is that ambulance not there? I know for a lot of you maybe that are watching this, I don't have to try to convince you this argument, but there's been one group of people that has been proven to be able to pull strings everywhere, all over the world stage, from on the international stage to local governments, federal, state governments. It seems like that whenever Israel or the deep state, if you want to look at past history in the United States, they're one and the same at this point, right? That's who we're talking about, is Israel working through our deep state, people that are aligned with them. They're the ones that are able to make these things happen, to have an ambulance, say, not show up at an event like this. I know that may seem like a big stretch to some people, but if you look at all these weird things, these weird things that happen, there's always stuff that lines up that just kind of shouldn't happen, but you know that like a favor was done by somebody somewhere. Someone made sure that there wouldn't be any ambulance on the premises there. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you. This is where it becomes problematic when you don't hold people accountable, right? Because that's what prevents these things from happening. That's what prevents corruption, when you hold people accountable. So when they don't do their job because they're bought out, well, they get fired and exposed. But when the whole system is corrupt, anyone that steps out as a whistleblower is killed, right? Killed or maligned, right? So that's what we have. We have a completely corrupt system, the exact type of system that could work their way from, foreign influence all the way to the state and local level and make an ambulance not show up. I don't think that that's too hard or too big of a problem for them to solve. We know they have judges paid for it. We know they have local law enforcement to some degree, likely paid for in certain municipalities in the country. We talk about, the APAC has bought out all sides of our government at this point. So it's very likely that when you see things like, our racist, the George Floyd protests, you got APAC probably funding and enticing both sides of that. So they got people and agents and money fueling and firing up, say, the Proud Boys, and you got people and agents and money fueling and firing up the left protesters, and they pit us against each other, just like they funded both sides of the world wars and pit people against each other. So no ambulance. This guy has to get trucked out and then dies likely shortly after arrival at the hospital. Rest in peace, Charlie, again, it sings. But it looks like he may have been taken out. Now, I said straight away, to really find out who did this, if you want to find out why this happened, maybe who's responsible, you're going to have to look at what's done with it after the fact. What do they try to do with his death? What's the reaction and response to his death? And how do people try to use it to their advantage? I think that tell has already been made. It didn't take long. We have flags flying all over the country at half-mast. We have the President of the United States saying that his voice is going to be amplified, and all these things. We have really all sorts of content creators / journalists, people covering this story and looking to turn it inward as some sort of result of domestic issues here in the United States. I had to deal with it, of course, is my argument, but this was not a result of it. Because you have to understand that our domestic issues here in the United States are a manufactured crisis. And this is only a piece of that, right? A piece of that manufactured crisis. And this was a tooling of that manufacturing process by the manufacturer. Yeah, let's kill him now. He's worth more dead to us than he is alive. Certainly, if he's changing his opinion, he's a threat to us alive. But if we can kill him and sanctify his name, link him with the support of Israel like he did for a long time. Now you can't speak out about Charlie Kirk you can't speak out about Charlie Kirk because he's sanctified, and you can't because he was assassinated and killed like that. Well, you can't speak out about Israel because he supported them, and Charlie Kirk's the good guy. And they'll do the same with his domestic policies and use them to divide in the same way by using his now sanctified status, which it looks like that's what they're trying to do. Flags at half-mast, the president making an address. Do you know how many other Americans die of gun violence? Are shot and killed? All these school shootings, public shootings. I'm not saying that his wasn't elevated or different in any way. It certainly was. But flags at half-mast. Here's another thing. CNN was present live streaming the speech. They seem to have a good record of that, don't they? We remember that they were mysteriously present to live stream Trump's first ever live stream with them was when he was shot out in Western PA here. So that's another marker of the situation that seems to be odd. They were there shooting the event. I don't know how normal that is. I'm not, but someone should look into that. Okay, continue on here with my argument. So, and it looks like I'm probably going to put together like a clipped up video of some of this stuff, but I wanted to get these thoughts out here and put them out in this manner first. This is really important. I want to see if I can codify this argument. So, okay, so now and if we're going to see the sanctifying and the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk carried out here in the U.S., we're going to see it carried out through the mainstream press apparatus, right? We're going to see it carried out through all the familiar channels. That's how they propagandize, okay? So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this being covered in ways that contribute to the overall purpose of really at this point breaking down America, spreading chaos in America, and overall distracting from one, what Israel's doing in Palestine, and two, the rest of the world that is forming against us and leaving us behind in a very peaceful way. Actually, we're just going down kicking and screaming, and our government's lying to all of us that this is really happening at all. They're lying, oh yeah, no genocide's happening, people aren't being starved, and the world's not forming into the BRICS nations and everything else coalescing around that and moving away from our unipolar world order. None of that's happening. Here, guys, argue about race. Here, guys, worry about the inflation that we put upon you here. I mean, the list can go on and on. So, really here, we have to look at how this is going to be used and how it is being used. We'll see how the media covers this in coming days and see what they choose to do. The other issue we have to say is, what about this this arrest made by the FBI in short order that was like proven to be complete BS. I clipped the guy's interview on one of the news channels. It was a guy that was there that got interviewed quick, very similar to the interviews from the Trump assassination, and he was like, no, this dude was not the shooter, there's no way, yada yada yada. Well, he was released a few hours later rather, and now we're being fed a different story. That stuff's weird. I don't know what the feds are doing, somehow arresting a guy on site like that, short of a federal agent being present and literally watching it happen and being able to make the arrest and collar the guy. There's no way that you could possibly, from a federal position, be making an arrest on that unless you have people on the ground that were firsthand involved. What you should have is local and state officials involved, hopefully making an arrest by similar fashion, or if not, doing the investigation to do so, carrying out that investigation, beginning it and carrying it out. A lot of weird things. So then I look, and this is one of the things that really sealed this for me here was Alex Cristofaro, one of the best channels in the world on geopolitics, if you want the truth on what's happening on the world stage between nations. He's covering the EU, okay? Now, at this point, the globalists, EU, which these are the same, globalists in EU are the neocons in the United States, the military-industrial complex in the United States, the deep state in the United States. These are all the same side, same, I guess not entity, but they are all aligned, and they're acting as one at this point, okay? They are represented in politics by what Europeans refer to as left side politicians, right? So all of these left politicians in the EU wanted a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. The right politicians, some of them respected it, but some refused to stand. I forget what it was, but they protested in a polite way about it. The important thing about this situation, the fact that this happened, is what this shows the propagandizing of the situation through familiar channels by the same people that I'm accusing of being responsible for this. You have, this is the state of Israel owns Europe. The state of Israel owns America's politicians in the same way. So let's get Trump out there talking about it like this. We'll put all the flags at half-mast, and over here in Europe, you guys do what you need to do to sanctify him in the same, and begin that process in the same way over there. And who are the ones that carry that out? All the politicians that are bought and paid for by Israel, that are their attack dogs. This stinks. Stinks bad. Rewind. Go back to that major split in this argument and say, should Charlie have not spoken out publicly and turned on Israel recently? I don't think that really even changes this much. He could have never done so all along, and I think they still could get to the point where these sick people could have come to the decision that he would be worth more to them dead than alive, even if he was purely a rabid supporter of theirs. Because if you could somehow do that and frame it to be, anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist, came and killed our biggest supporter, boy. He said enough good stuff about Israel they got on tape that would be worth a whole lot. They can run those tapes. He done did all that. But boy, killing him in that regard, this is what these people do. The human price tag is nothing to them. Nothing. We see what they're doing with their own hostages. That's been turned into a political issue that they don't even care to solve. What's to think they won't do the same thing with anyone? I mean, they're with one of our citizens here. They just violated Qatar's sovereignty. That's an attack on a neutral nation that is handling peace negotiations. These are things that don't happen. It's not normal stuff, man. I think at this point, Netanyahu would stop at nothing. There's nothing that's off limits for him and his apparatus that controls most of the Western world. It's plain to see at this point. And I think what we're seeing here with this Charlie Kirk thing is just another situation where they're behind the scenes, behind the curtain, holding the strings, and making decisions. He was wearing a vest, by his own words, to protect himself from what he thought was a hit coming from Israel. The shot, here's another one. I'm trying to rack my head for some of my points that I missed. I do all my talking off the head, and I probably should write stuff down, but the shot comes off from quite a far range, it looks like. I mean, that was a high-powered rifle. His body just bucked. Now, I guess I know why. So apparently the shot ricocheted off the top of his body armor and went up into his neck. So he was really tore. That's why I think you saw, I mean, it must have hit his blood circulatory system. There's just an immense amount of blood that poured out there, and it wasn't like a single flesh wound coming straight in. It tore through and opened him up really bad because of the angle of the ricochet. But to think this guy was wearing a vest to protect himself from an assassination attempt, and he got killed with a shot that hit him in the neck. Who's to say the gunman wasn't aiming for his neck? That's not a stretch to think. So now you have a situation where the assassin, or whoever's calling the hit on him, is aware that he's going to be defending himself. Okay, let's do this, but we got to hit him here. This isn't domestic U.S. politics that are involved at that level of things, guys. No way. No way. No way. The important story here is you got to look at this and end up with these questions about Israel. We can't look at this and turn back and say, oh my God, this has to do with XYZ, racism, anything else here in the United States, left-right politics here in the United States. If we do that, we're doing ourselves a complete disservice, and we're falling into the trap that's set for us. Bless up.